For years, the Whittaker family from Odd, West Virginia, existed in the quiet shadows of rural life. That is, until one documentary changed everything. From the first moment their story appeared on soft white underbelly, the world was captivated, fascinated by their simplicity, confused by their circumstances, and divided by their reality. But after years of public attention, arguments, accusations, and heartbreak, something unexpected happened. The Whittakers disappeared. No new videos, no new interviews, no porch conversations, no updates. For a family that once seemed to live under the constant gaze of millions, the sudden silence felt like a thunderclap. And just like that, the Whittakers' farewell began, quietly, painfully, and in a way that left the internet asking, what really happened? A sudden end to the updates. It started slowly. Viewers noticed fewer videos. The house, once filled with chatter and dogs barking in the background, seemed eerily quiet. Betty, the family matriarch, who had once spoken freely to anyone who showed up with a camera or a gift, went silent. Then came rumors, lots of them. Some said adult protective services had intervened. Others claimed that family members had been moved into state care. A few even suggested that Betty herself had chosen to step back from the spotlight to protect what little privacy they had left. No one could confirm anything. Even those who once claimed to be close to the family started to distance themselves. Patrick, a former supporter and content creator, announced in a video that he was done with the situation. He said he'd continue to help privately if needed, but the public videos, the interviews, and the updates were over. For the first time in years, there are no porch clips, no conversations, no glimpses into their everyday life. The internet reacted immediately. Did they move? One person commented. Did something happen to them? Asked another. And then someone wrote the question that seemed to echo through every discussion. Did the Whittakers say goodbye for good? The story that captivated the world. To understand the heartbreak of their farewell, we have to revisit why the Whittakers became a global phenomenon in the first place. When filmmaker Mark Lyda introduced them to the world in 2020, audiences were stunned. The family lived in a small, run-down home in the hills of West Virginia, isolated, misunderstood, and, as many quickly pointed out, affected by generations of inbreeding. But what kept viewers watching wasn't just their differences. It was their humanity. Lorraine's soft smile, Ray's unique voice and gentle eyes, Timmy's quiet moments with his coloring books, and Betty's protective love, even when life clearly hadn't given her many chances. People didn't just see the Whittakers, they felt them. They represented something raw and real in a world obsessed with perfection. But with fame came chaos. Donations poured in, promises were made, and strangers started showing up at their door. Their story was no longer just a documentary. It became a full-blown internet spectacle. The breaking point. By late 2023, the family's story had taken a darker turn. Accusations of financial exploitation surfaced. Content creators who once championed the family began to fight publicly over money, credit, and access. Mark Lyda faced criticism for allegedly profiting from the family's pain, though others defended him, saying he gave them support and exposure they'd never have had otherwise. Then came new players, like Eric Carroll and Patrick Rohr, who claimed they were helping the family financially, creating YouTube channels and managing donations on their behalf. But transparency was missing. Rumors spread that thousands of dollars had gone missing. Fans accused people of using the Whittaker name for profit. The drama built up until finally, everything imploded. By early 2024, reports emerged that some members of the family had been placed in state care. Betty allegedly lost guardianship over Ray and Lorraine. APS, the Adult Protective Services Division, reportedly intervened due to health and safety concerns. What followed was silence, the kind that feels heavy like grief. Betty's final plea. Before the silence, a letter began circulating online. It was said to be written by Betty Whittaker herself, though some doubted whether it truly came from her hand. The letter, heartfelt and raw, read more like a goodbye than a statement. I sit on this porch, and it feels too big now. Too quiet. Too empty. Timmy's not here with his paper. Lorraine's not hiding her chips. Ray's not barking at the dogs. The cars go by, and nobody waves no more. Maybe they forgot us. Maybe that's for the best. She ended it with a plea. We just need family, not fancy. Bring them home. Whether Betty truly wrote it or not, the words struck a nerve. Fans flooded the comments with sympathy, anger, and confusion. Some blamed the system. Others blamed the internet. Many simply mourned the idea that this once united, fragile family was now broken apart. The internet turns reflective. As news of the family separation spread, people began to question everything, not just about the Whittakers, but about the way we treat stories like theirs. Had the internet gone too far? Was documenting their lives ever truly about helping them? Or was it always about curiosity and clicks? Do the cameras give them dignity or take it away? Psychologists and social commentators began weighing in. Some called it poverty porn. Others defended the exposure as awareness. But everyone agreed on one thing. The Whittakers had become more than a family. They had become a mirror reflecting society's obsession with watching others live, struggle, and suffer. The farewell nobody expected. When Patrick uploaded his final video, saying he was stepping away, fans assumed it was just another temporary break. But it wasn't. Weeks passed, then months. The YouTube channel stopped uploading. Betty's Facebook page went silent. Even Mark Lyda, who had once been the family's primary storyteller, stopped giving updates. And that's when it sank in. This wasn't a pause. It was a farewell. The Whittakers, willingly or not, had vanished from public life. The internet that once couldn't stop watching now sat with an uncomfortable truth. Maybe it had watched too much. The porch that once symbolized the family's openness was now a metaphor for their departure. Empty, still, and echoing with memories of laughter, arguments, and unfiltered moments that touched millions. The people who once said, "We love them," now had to reckon with what that love had done. The legacy of the Whittakers' silence. The disappearance of the Whittakers isn't just the end of a viral story. It's the end of an era of unfiltered exposure. Their farewell forced everyone to ask where the line lies between awareness and exploitation. They didn't need lights or followers. What they needed, what they always needed, was understanding, compassion, and a chance to live with dignity. And perhaps, in their final silence, that's what they finally found. How do you feel about the Whittakers' farewell? Was it peace or punishment? Do you think they were saved from exploitation or silenced by it? Share your thoughts in the comments, because this isn't just their story anymore. It's ours too. When the news of the Whittakers' disappearance spread across social media, the reaction was immediate and deeply divided. What began as a wave of sympathy quickly turned into a clash of opinions. Some people mourned the end of an era. Others celebrated what they saw as a necessary end to exploitation, and a few questioned whether the entire saga had ever truly been about helping the family at all. The internet had spent years watching this family, analyzing their every word, gesture, and silence. But now, the absence of new videos seemed louder than any of their old ones. For the first time, people had to fill in the blanks themselves. And that's where the chaos began, the divide among the fans. Within days of the farewell, social media groups dedicated to the Whittakers started to split. On one side were the people heartbroken by the idea that Betty had lost her family. viewers who had grown attached to them like distant relatives. On the other side were those who said it was time for the family to be left alone, arguing that the attention had done more harm than good. One post on Facebook read, "Betty didn't deserve this. She kept them together for decades. Now the government took them away because strangers couldn't mind their business." Another replied, "She couldn't care for them properly. Maybe now they'll get real help. Not everything is a conspiracy." Hundreds of comments followed, some kind, others cruel. Arguments broke out daily between fans, supporters of Mark Lyda, critics of Patrick Rohr, and defenders of Betty. Each group seemed to believe they were the ones protecting the truth. In the middle of it all, the Whittakers themselves remained silent. That silence was unbearable for those who had built emotional connections to them through years of watching. People began sharing old clips, Ray's barking laugh, Lorraine's smiles, Timmy's quiet moments, as if replaying them could somehow bring the family back. The return of old controversies. As discussions grew, old wounds reopened. The debates over money, over who helped and who exploited, came roaring back to life. Many fans pointed fingers at Patrick, claiming his involvement blurred the lines between charity and content. Others said Mark Lyda bore the ultimate responsibility for introducing the family to the world. Someone commented under a post, "Mark gave them platform. Patrick gave them chaos." Another shot back, "If it weren't for Mark, they'd still be living in total poverty. Everyone used them, then walked away when it got too messy." The truth, of course, was complicated. Mark's documentaries had indeed given the Whittakers a global voice. Millions learned about poverty, disability, and the struggles of life in rural Appalachia through their story. But that same exposure brought a flood of attention, money, cameras, strangers, and chaos that the family was never equipped to handle. For every person who sent love, there was another who sent ridicule. For every donation, there was someone trying to profit. The line between compassion and consumption had long since blurred. And now, with the farewell, the internet was being forced to face that uncomfortable reality. Betty's absence and the speculation spiral. One of the biggest mysteries after the family's disappearance was Betty's fate. For years, she was the family's protector, the voice who stood between her relatives and the outside world. But after reports surfaced that she lost custody or guardianship of her siblings, she vanished too. There were whispers online that Betty had been placed under supervision herself. Some claimed she had moved to live with other relatives. Others suggested she had chosen isolation after losing the people she loved most. No one had proof, just theories. But what made the internet's obsession grow was the emotional vacuum left behind. Betty was never perfect. She was often criticized for her temper and her decisions, but she was the heart of that household. Without her, the story felt incomplete. People wrote long posts reminiscing about her stern but caring voice, her defense of Ray and Lorraine, her arguments with outsiders. Even those who once judged her now felt something like guilt. One comment summed it up perfectly. "We all judge her from our couches. But that woman lived a life most of us couldn't survive a week in." The documentary's legacy reignited. Mark Lyda's soft, white underbelly series had already become a cornerstone of digital storytelling, raw, uncomfortable, and unforgettable. But after the Whittakers' silence, discussions about his role took on a new intensity. Fans demanded he give an update, but Mark stayed quiet. That silence only fueled the fire. People wondered if he had been legally restricted from speaking, or if he simply didn't want to reignite the media circus. In the absence of answers, the speculation turned philosophical. Viewers started revisiting the original videos, not as entertainment, but as social commentary. The family became symbols, not just of rural poverty or disability, but of how easily real human lives can become spectacles. Psychologists weighed in, writing op-eds about the moral cost of voyeurism. Sociologists discussed digital poverty tourism. The debate shifted from where are they to what do we learn from them? And the uncomfortable truth emerged. The Whittakers' story wasn't unique. There are thousands of families across America living isolated, invisible lives. But the world only noticed this one because someone put a camera in front of them. Patrick's confession and the final goodbye. Weeks after going silent, Patrick reappeared with one final post. It wasn't a video this time, just a message. I tried to help. Maybe I did it wrong. Maybe I made it worse. But I love that family like my own. This will be my last update. Wherever they are, I hope they're finally at peace. That post hit hard. Even people who disliked him admitted it felt final. Patrick, who had once been so vocal, seemed defeated. Not long after, Brian, another YouTuber who had once filmed with the family, followed suit. He announced that he, too, would be ending his coverage permanently. It's time to let them live their lives, he wrote. We've done enough. And with that, it truly ended. No more videos. No more porch scenes. No more speculation from those who claim to know. Just silence again. The public's emotional hangover. The farewell left an unexpected void. People who had followed the family for years now felt like they had lost someone close. Subreddits and Facebook groups turned into grief circles. Fans shared their favorite clips, Ray laughing, Lorraine waving, Betty cooking, and talked about how the family changed their view of poverty, disability, and family loyalty. Some even wrote messages to the Whittakers, like letters to people who would never read them. You reminded me what family really means. I hope you're safe, wherever you are. We didn't deserve to watch you, but I'm glad we did. For once, the internet wasn't just cruel. It was reflective, almost mournful. And maybe that was the most powerful thing the Whittakers ever gave us, the ability to feel compassion, even for people we could never truly understand. The question that remains, as the months passed and the story faded from headlines, one question lingered. Did the Whittakers finally find peace, or were they simply silenced? No one knows, and maybe we never will. But one thing is certain. The Whittakers' farewell changed something, not just for them, but for all of us watching. It made us confront the darker side of curiosity, the weight of fame without choice, and the cost of turning real lives into content. And perhaps the greatest tragedy isn't that they disappeared. It's that we only started to care when they were gone. What do you think? Did the Whittakers finally escape exploitation, or did the system take away their freedom? How do you feel about their story ending this way? Share your thoughts below. This conversation isn't just about them anymore. It's about all of us. The Whittakers' disappearance from the public, I left a vacuum. Not just of updates and videos, but of meaning. For years, they had become something larger than life, an ongoing story that made people cry, argue, and reflect. Now, with their silence, a new chapter began, one that wasn't about what they said or did, but about what we did with their story. The aftermath of the farewell wasn't loud. It was quiet, like the stillness after a storm. The content creators who once built their channels around the Whittakers moved on to new topics. The viewers who once watched religiously found new stories. But beneath the surface, something deeper lingered. A shared sense of guilt, confusion, and uncomfortable introspection. When empathy becomes exploitation. The story of the Whittakers was never just about one family in West Virginia. It was about us, the audience. The millions of people who watched, commented, shared, and reacted. In the beginning, most viewers said they were drawn by empathy. They wanted to understand. They wanted to help. But over time, empathy turned into entertainment. People debated their mannerisms, made memes, speculated about their conditions, and treated their lives like an open book. The line between compassion and exploitation blurred so quietly that no one noticed until it was too late. One Reddit user summed it up painfully well. "We all started out trying to help them, but somewhere along the line, we started owning them." The Whittakers never had the luxury of privacy. Their home became a backdrop for documentaries and YouTube videos. Their daily routines, things most families take for granted, became content. And while some people claimed to care deeply, others profited off every click, every reaction, every tear. The most haunting part of the Whittaker story isn't the inbreeding, the poverty, or the tragedy. It's that we turned their pain into spectacle and called it compassion. The price of digital charity. After the farewell, questions about the money resurfaced. The donations, the GoFundMe pages, the PayPal links. Where did it all go? At the height of their popularity, thousands of people around the world sent money to help the family. But with so many people involved, creators, middlemen, friends, accountability became impossible. Some claimed that Betty and Larry mismanaged funds. Others insisted that content creators pocketed most of the money themselves. No one could prove anything. That uncertainty became symbolic of the bigger issue: how digital charity can easily turn into chaos. Good intentions without structure often collapse under their own weight. In the Whittakers' case, every donation came with invisible strings: expectations, control, and judgment. People wanted to help, but they also wanted to dictate how the family lived. When viewers saw the Whittakers still living modestly, they accused them of wasting money. When they accepted help from the wrong person, they were called ungrateful. When they refused new cameras, they were hiding something. In reality, they were human, imperfect, unpolished, and simply trying to survive in a world that suddenly demanded explanations. The emotional toll on the family. Before the silence, it was already clear that the attention was taking a toll. Betty's frustration in interviews, Larry's exhaustion, and the confusion on the faces of Ray and Lorraine. It was all there for anyone willing to see. The internet treated them like a story. But they were a family dealing with very real challenges: disabilities, isolation, grief, and poverty. Every new visitor, every camera, every promise of help brought a mix of hope and fear. By the time authorities stepped in, the family's lives had been dissected so thoroughly that even simple acts, like sitting on the porch, became public property. Some experts later suggested that the constant exposure might have worsened their stress. The community around them, once quiet and private, turned into a revolving door of strangers with cameras. People began showing up at their property, taking pictures, leaving gifts, and in some cases, even trespassing. For Betty, who had spent decades protecting her siblings from ridicule, it must have felt like losing control all over again. The internet's reckoning. When the family disappeared, the internet had to confront its own reflection. How do we get here? How did a story about helping a forgotten family become a global spectacle of exploitation, outrage, and debate? Several content creators, including those who had once covered the family, released apology videos. Some admitted they got caught up in the attention and should have stepped back sooner. Others defended their actions, saying they brought awareness to rural poverty and mental health. But among the apologies and justifications, one truth stood out. Nobody had ever asked the Whittakers if they wanted this level of attention. Their voices, already fragile, had been drowned out by louder ones: creators, fans, critics, and even officials. By the time the family faded from view, their story no longer belonged to them. It belonged to the internet. Betty's words resurface. Months after the farewell, an old clip began resurfacing online. It showed Betty sitting on the porch, looking directly into the camera, saying, "Y'all talk like we don't know what's going on. We know. We see. But we're not here for your money or your pity. We just want peace. That moment hit differently after the farewell. Back then, people might have dismissed it as another Betty moment. But now, it sounded like a warning, one that no one heard until it was too late. Her words became a kind of epilogue to their story. The internet realized that while it had claimed to love the Whittakers, it had also ignored their boundaries. The family had been asking for peace all along, and only found it by disappearing. The role of responsibility. The Whittaker story isn't just a cautionary tale about poverty or disability. It's a lesson in responsibility. The responsibility of filmmakers to protect their subjects. The responsibility of audiences to question what they consume. And the responsibility of platforms to recognize when storytelling becomes exploitation. The internet can do extraordinary things. It can expose injustice, raise funds, and bring people together. But it can also destroy lives when empathy becomes entertainment. In the case of the Whittakers, both happened at once. They received more help than ever before, but at the cost of their privacy, dignity, and family unity. As one viewer wrote, "We saved them and broke them at the same time." A digital ghost story. Now, the Whittakers exist as a kind of digital ghost story, a family immortalized in videos, memes, and endless discussions, but gone from real life. Their porch, once filled with chatter and cameras, stands empty. Their faces live on in algorithms and thumbnails, but the people behind them have stepped out of the frame. And maybe that's how it should be. Their silence is not just an ending. It's a message. A reminder that behind every viral story is a beating heart, a family, and a line that should never have been crossed. Do you think the Whittakers were helped or harmed by the attention they received? Should stories like theirs ever be filmed again? Or should they remain private? Share your honest thoughts in the comments. This time, let's talk about what we've learned, not just what we've watched. When the last video faded to black and the Whittaker family slipped away from public sight, many assumed the story was over. But in reality, their silence became the loudest message of all. It forced people, viewers, creators, and even critics to face the uncomfortable truth that had been hiding behind every porch interview and viral clip. The world wasn't just watching the Whittakers, it was consuming them. And now that they were gone, what remained wasn't just curiosity, it was reflection. The family's farewell left behind lessons that reached far beyond Odd, West Virginia. Lesson 1. Humanity beyond the headlines. The Whittakers became known to the world as a curiosity, a mystery wrapped in rural poverty and generations of isolation. But for those who truly watched, not just glanced, something more profound emerged. Despite their challenges, there was a powerful thread of love and resilience in that family. Betty's fierce loyalty, Lorraine's shy affection, Timmy's gentle focus, and Ray's pure spirit reminded the world that humanity exists in every corner, even in places society forgets. Their lives challenged viewers to rethink what it means to be normal, to ask whether intelligence, wealth, or status are what define a life worth respecting. In a culture obsessed with perfection, the Whittakers showed us something raw, something flawed, but undeniably human. And that's what made their farewell hurt. It wasn't just that we lost sight of them. It was that we lost sight of ourselves in the process. Lesson 2. The cost of exposure. The digital age has made it easier than ever to share stories. But the Whittakers case exposed what happens when storytelling becomes exploitation. For years, they were filmed without filters, their private lives laid bare for millions. What began as awareness turned into voyeurism. Viewers dissected their every gesture, debated their conditions, even mocked their speech. The same people who said they loved the family often reduced them to spectacle. The Whittakers never asked for that. They didn't script their lives for views. They didn't chase fame. Fame found them and refused to let go. The lesson here is a sobering one. Not every story needs to be told, and not every act of help is truly helpful. Sometimes the most compassionate thing we can do is step back. Lesson 3. The failure of systems. Behind the internet drama was a deeper tragedy. The failure of the systems meant to protect families like the Whittakers. For decades, they lived in conditions that should have triggered social intervention, poverty, disability, isolation, yet they were largely ignored until the cameras arrived. It wasn't the government, charities, or community programs that brought attention to them. It was YouTube. And when the attention became too much, the same systems stepped in, not to offer understanding, but to separate, to control, to remove. Betty reportedly lost guardianship of her family members, not through guidance or support, but through punishment. And while many agree the state had good intentions, others argue that the solution was too extreme. What if, instead of taking the family apart, they had been given long-term mental health care, better housing, and supervised help? Their farewell revealed a painful truth. We only notice the vulnerable when it's too late. Lesson 4. The mirror of the internet. The Whittakers became a mirror for society, reflecting our collective empathy, curiosity, and cruelty. The way people reacted to them says more about the world than it does about the family. Some viewers sent gifts, prayers, and donations. Others mocked, analyzed, and speculated. Many just watched, fascinated but detached. It's easy to feel compassion from behind screen. It's harder to take responsibility for what that compassion becomes. The Whittakers showed us how quickly a story about love can turn into one about consumption. Their legacy asks one question that every viewer, creator, and platform must answer. At what point does caring turn into using? Lesson 5. The power of silence. When Betty stopped speaking to the public, when the porch went quiet, and when no one answered the door, that was the moment the story changed. Her silence wasn't surrender. It was protection. For the first time, the Whittakers had control over their own narrative. No more outsiders, no more lenses, no more strangers interpreting their lives. It's ironic. The family that was once most visible became powerful through invisibility. Their silence forced the world to pause, to think, to reflect. And in that stillness, something remarkable happened. Empathy returned. Not the loud, performative kind that trends online, but the quiet, genuine kind that asks for nothing in return. Where the story ends and begins again. The Whittakers' story isn't about pity. It's about perspective. They live a life that defied society's norms and still managed to hold on to love, loyalty, and resilience. They became a global sensation not because of their differences, but because of what they revealed about us. Our fascination with the unknown, our hunger for connection, and our struggle to separate compassion from curiosity. Now, as the world moves on, their silence remains, a final, unspoken chapter. Somewhere in West Virginia, a porch sits quiet. Maybe the dogs still bark at passing cars. Maybe the wind still carries the echoes of laughter. Maybe, for the first time, they're truly at peace. The world might never know what became of the Whittakers, but perhaps that's the way it should be. Because the greatest tribute we can give them isn't another video, another comment, or another debate. It's understanding. It's letting them rest. What did you learn from the Whittakers' story? Do you think their silence was peace or punishment? Share your honest thoughts below. Not as spectators, but as people reflecting on what compassion truly means.